Welcome back to the Saints Squad. I'm your host, Dylan Sanders of Saints Wire. Doesn't have a point of view, knows not where he's going to. Isn't he a bit like me and you?
I'm Ross Jackson, host of the Locked On Saints podcast. And this week's OTAs are all about the young guys.
John Hendricks, New Orleans Football. And I don't know how many times I'm going to cut Dylan off today.
This is former Saints wide receiver Lance Moore. And after doing a little bit of math, I believe the Saints have a chance to win each game this season.
Ooh.
It's the Saints Squad, sponsored by Game Time. Everything New Orleans Saints, every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from down in the Big Easy, the way only Locked On Podcast Network can. Get ready and squad up. It's the Saints Squad Show, starting now.
Howdy, Who Dat Nation. Welcome back to the Saints Squad, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making us your first listen every Monday and Thursday. We have a unique group of experts here ready to bring you a fun and informative show on everything New Orleans Saints. I mean, we had a show planned. We might have to scrap it now that I found out that the Saints are going 17-0. But if we're sticking to the original plan, we're going to talk a little Kendre Miller. We're going to go some coaching talk, not just the big guys. Then we're going to talk about Derek Carr in general. You know, it's over, and he had some things to say, so we're going to talk about that. And then closing it out, starting us off, actually, we're going to go into the final little OTA preview. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. And let's jump into it with the OTA talk. Let's start with Ross. What do you want to see from the last little push of OTAs?
I want to see the young guys step up. This is the biggest thing for me right now going into final week of OTAs. It's kind of like the last moment before all the vets show back up full time, right? Mandatory minicamp starts next week. Then the next time that they hit the field after that, it's training camp. Guys start losing money if they don't show up. So all the veteran guys are there. All the young guys are there. Everybody's there. And so the NFL has made training camp effectively mandatory without calling it mandatory. And so this is really one of the last chances that some of these young guys are going to get to be in a big role and have the opportunity to be able to show something to this coaching staff before they show up. Couple of examples of that. We've been talking about Danny Stutzman a ton on this show, but once Demario Davis comes back, Demario, Pete Werner, they're kind of solidified in where they are. Danny Stutzman ends up maybe not getting as many opportunities outside of what John mentioned last Monday, which was like those rest days and stuff like that for the vets. Guys like Chase Young, Carl Granderson, eventually Cam Jordan is back, right? He wasn't there last week when we were present. Doesn't mean that he wasn't there, just not while we were present, was present the week before. And then you look at guys like Jonas Sanker and Justin Reed, who's new to the team and all that, how things shift when Tyrann Mathieu's back. So I think that that's the big thing that I'm going to be watching for is these young guys who kind of get that last opportunity to step up and show out before the veterans come back and maybe push them back in the depth chart a little bit.
Yeah. John, what do you want to see?
Yeah, piggyback off of Ross. I mean, we've seen guys like Terrell Burgess. I mean, he was with Brandon Staley in 2020. Jonah Williams, they were both with Brandon Staley. And so they've been seeing a little bit more first team action. Again, you got to take everything in OTAs with kind of a grain of salt, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think even with that, those are two players on the defensive side of the ball that I think have a little bit of an advantage here, being that they've been in a Staley system already. And so they could be good rotational pieces. When you look at OTAs, look, the only players we really haven't set eyes on is JT Gray and Nathan Shepard or Tyrann Mathieu. Now, I'm not worried about Tyrann Mathieu. I'm not worried about AK because AK is not going to be here until minicamp. Probably tired too, but we got to see Davon Godchaux back in action on the OTA highlight, so that's a good sign for him. But only just a few that we haven't seen, so that's obviously going to be a big focal point is seeing the big man Davon Godchaux. Does he go in the middle? I know Lance has talked about on the show putting him on, more of a left side, potentially not necessarily throwing him at nose. Is that Vernon Broughton? Is that going to be Colin Saunders? Is it going to be Brzee? Or what are they going to do? It's going to be interesting how they mix that up. And of course, on the offensive side of the ball, it's about the quarterbacks, guys. We know this, and we see the excitement in the videos now about Spencer Rattler hooking up with Chris Olave or Tyler Shough saying Rashid Shaheed's down there somewhere, and those connections in OTAs are exciting to see. And man, it's again refreshing to see them take the shots and then, being able to connect. But, this is our last chance to see everything kind of in this little OTAs. I don't want to say like light period, because mini camp, it'll pick up a little bit. It still won't be like, thunder and lightning type stuff when you get into training camp. But again, it'll be the last time we get to see these guys at mini camp before the training camp, which is like a month and some change, almost a month and a half. So just to see the last impressions from Rattler and Shough are probably the big ones. But look, like Ross said, these other position battles, some of this matters, guys like Easton Kilty jumping up from the third team offensive line to the second team offensive line. That's going to be something to keep an eye on. They may have guys that they like early on in the process. So we'll see how this thing goes.
Yeah. Lance, what about you?
Look, I think you guys are dead on. Like, you're spot on. Like, the young guys getting opportunities in these OTA periods is invaluable for them, because fast forward now, I'm skipping over mini camp, but we'll talk more about that, I'm sure, next week. But training camp is not as rep even as one might think, right? Like, going into training camp, the organization, coaches, front office, executives, they know about 80 to 85% of the roster already, right? Yeah. So if you've already know 80 to maybe even 90% of the roster, they already know who's going to be the majority of the team. So they can't spend a ton of time giving reps to guys that they know are not going to be around, because once training camp comes, it's about the regular season. Like, sure, there are 3 preseason games that they're getting prepared for and all that stuff. But the idea of training camp is to get your team ready to play week 1. That's the entire reason behind training camp. Surely you've got to make cuts. That's a necessary part of the process, but it's not the way that it is now in the offseason, where there's, the distribution of reps is pretty equal. They want to make sure the young guys get an opportunity. It's not going to be like that during training camp. And this could be a time now that some of these young guys do earn reps come training camp. So yes, this is huge for the young guys. And I'm going to say kind of the same thing I said last week about what I want to see through the rest of the OTAs. And for me, it's to remain healthy. Like, that's to me is the most important thing. Surely you want guys to work hard and get better and, to get more adjusted and acclimated to the new systems on either side of the ball, but you got to be healthy first. And I think that, being able to get through this stretch of OTAs healthy, jump into mini camp where it does ratchet up a notch for sure. It's basically a condensed couple of days of training camp where they're going to be meeting earlier, meeting longer throughout the day. They'll throw in some more walkthroughs. Like, it definitely is more intense during mini camp. You just can't have, pads and full contact like you can during training camp. So, health to me is paramount. The guys that are still banged up, hopefully they're continuing to progress in their rehab as we get closer to training camp. But yeah. I mean, it's having been through this process a bunch of times myself. The goal is to get better, right? It's to improve every day. But more importantly, even than that, to me, is to remain healthy and hopefully get some guys back as we continue to go along.
Yeah, I think those are obviously very important things. I think if I were to boil it down to one specific thing I want to see more of this week is maybe a little bit of something in the running back room. We've talked about how interesting it is, but the most we've gotten is that, hey, Kendre Miller looked a little bit smoother in some drills. So maybe hopefully seeing a little bit more from the running back room, I guess, would be one specific thing that I want to see a little bit more of.
It is interesting.
He's probably not going to get much.
Right. It is interesting that, like, during OTAs, you are permitted to do not just 7-on-7s, but 9-on-7s and 11-on-11 full team as well. Just to Lance's point, you can't, you're not going full contact and stuff like that. You're not putting pads on. And the Saints, at least in front of us, right? And even in the clips that they've shared, have done a lot of 7-on-7s. And Kellen Moore said as much during the New Orleans Saints annual celebrity golf tournament. No.
Yeah. The golf classic. Golf classic.
That's what I was looking for. Thank you. he said as much during that time that they wouldn't do a lot of like team drills, but then they would do like 7-on-7s and stuff like that. And so I wonder if that has impacted a little bit of what we might typically see when it comes to the run game. Because even when they do some of those run drills and stuff like that in front of us, it's all kind of walkthrough-ish and everything like that. So I am curious about that. And I wonder too, to your point, Lance, if maybe not doing the team drills is about keeping everybody healthy and reducing a little bit of the bang bang stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think 2 points. One, it could be by design, totally a thing for him to say, okay, if we have less bodies around, it's less of a chance that we're going to have bodies on the ground, people falling over one another, whether it's somebody trying to tackle somebody or not. And then I guess with that, it's kind of hard to highlight the running backs if you're not doing team drills, right? And even if they are doing team drills, it's still hard to highlight what the running backs are doing in the run game without contact and without pads, right? Like the offensive lineman can get their fits. The defensive lineman can get their fits. They can kind of be somewhat aggressive with their hands, but it's really, I always in the offseason, I always was kind of like, okay, we're just out here kind of fake blocking the DBs, because it's not, they still would want us to get up on them and get our hands on them. And we're still physically trying to block them, but it's a whole different feel than it is, when you've actually got equipment on, you can drop your shoulder on somebody and the contact isn't just I'm going to agree to not run you over if you agree to not run me over type of thing. So, and that's not to say that we didn't do full team with Sean Payton. We did everything with Payton. We were going to do that because he needed to see stuff in practice before he was ever going to run it in games. And we drilled stuff over and over and over again. And I'm sure these guys are getting the reps. It might just be periods that aren't open to the media. But I would imagine that there's no way they're going through an entire offseason without doing 11-on-11 work. And maybe it is just walkthrough stuff because they don't want guys getting banged up. But you got to do it because even though it's a slower and less physical pace, it's still reps. And you got to rep these plays, and you got to see those plays against different defenses and vice versa. You got to see those offensive concepts against your defense. So, and he's a new coach, so he might have a whole new philosophy than the past coaches have had. Yeah,
and I will say they are doing full team like walkthroughs and stuff like that. It's just the stuff.
But I don't think they've done any runs in that either. So
no, they did
air it out, baby. Let's air it out.
Hey, that was one of the early things that Kellen Moore said, right? Was like, if I could throw it 50 times a game, I would. But, you got to run the football too. So I think he said that.
He was a quarterback in a very high-powered offense. I mean, I'm sure there's a part of him that wants
football history.
Yeah. Hey, winning his coach in New Orleans Saints history.
Oh, okay. Let's pump the brakes.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I don't know. We gotta hear about Lance's numbers, and maybe we'll find out if that's true or not.
Well, I was just gonna say one thing on injuries. I'm sorry, Lance. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
How does it feel?
One thing on injuries. We don't want to hear about
a win for Dylan. What a win for Dylan! Wow.
Change it. No, I was gonna say, look what happened to the Steelers and Donald Parham. I mean, he tore his Achilles at OTAs, a workout like that. That's not what you want to have happen. And so Lance's point that he made earlier, you just want to see everybody put bubble wrap around both quarterbacks, put bubble wrap around Rashid Shaheed, Chris Olave, Alante, like all these players. Like, the Saints don't have good luck when it comes to injuries, but if they can get through this without any problems or anything like that, this would be a big win. And same thing with minicamp. That's all I would say. But unfortunately for Parham, tearing his Achilles, I hate seeing stuff like that this early in the process.
Well, speaking of injuries, did Derek Carr get injured or not? I don't know. We'll talk about it coming up next. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances. Major momentum shifts and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. If you think that SGA's aura can carry him to being the top scorer in Game 1 of the NBA Finals, you can put $5 on that at -290, and if it wins, boom, $200 in bonus bets. That's the easiest way of $200. Tyrese Halliburton, no aura. SGA, all aura. If you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. I mean, I have to be honest. I love Tyrese Halliburton. So make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Jumping right back into it, and we're done with the OTA talk, and we're going to talk a little Derek Carr. Some people might have thought you might not hear about him anymore, but too bad. Yesterday, he talked to Front Office Sports, and I think this is the jumping off point to our conversation. This is his quote about retiring. That part was tough because I didn't want to have surgery and just sit there, and it sounds crazy, but just take the Saints' money. So it's $30 million. And I want to start off with Lance's reaction to just that a little bit.
Can I have that 30 that he didn't
Yeah,
want?
we could split it.
Hey,
I'll take 3.
The Saints cut me after the 13th season with 2 seasons left on my deal. It wasn't anywhere near $30 million, but if there was an opportunity for me to keep the rest of that money, you best believe I would have kept all that money.
100%.
I still say to this day that Mickey and the organization still owe me those 2 years. But I just don't know that I believe that it's like I want to be a nice guy here. Take that money that is owed to me, right? Like,
right.
I don't know. Seems to be a nice guy. I've met him. I've talked to him on multiple occasions. $30 million, man. That's generational money, right? Like that's an opportunity to. Now he's obviously made a ton of money in his career, but what 30 million more on top of that ton of money is money for your family for generations. Like that to me is the part that I'm having trouble understanding, right? And I'm sure you guys will tap into this a little bit more heavily, but like the timeline to me has been confusing the entire offseason. Yeah. Just trying to figure out what exactly has happened, what then materialized, what the necessary or unnecessary reactions to said movements were. Like it all just screams kind of dysfunction from an organizational standpoint to me. And if you don't know what's going on with your franchise quarterback, then what else are you missing in around your organization? And look, this is fresh, right? Like June 1, retirement became official, like through the NFL, right? That was the magical date. And when players retire, me included, there's always an uprising, I guess, in people wanting to talk to you about the decision that you made and stuff. So if people are like annoyed by it, all the timing and blah, 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 well, that to me is totally normal. Like he's probably going to have more interviews. He's going to have more public statements. Because it's fresh. It's new. He's a guy that played over a decade in the league. And so he wants to talk about it. I totally understand that part of it. I understand the transition, especially in the beginning, how foreign it is after you've done something. And I believe I've mentioned it on this show. Like for most of us, football is our longest relationship. And once we retire or we are retired by the game, we never get back together with that relationship, right? We never get back together with football. And so there is a bit of uncertainty. There's a grieving process. And I'm sure he is just like at the tip of the iceberg as far as that process for himself and how he's going to feel, down the line. I'm sure it's going to get more and more weird for him as time goes along. And as we get into training camp and then in the regular season, that's how it was for me. But yeah, I mean, I'm not one of those people that's like, oh my gosh, like stop talking, bro. Like I'm not like that at all, because I have the former player perspective that it's different for everybody, right? Like, I mean, I would have loved to retire after making almost $200 million, but I didn't, right? But he still, I would imagine, is going to go through that grieving process and how severe or not that is going to be dependent on how he, processes all of his feelings about it. But I do think that it's reasonable that he's out and he's talking, and people are requesting he talk to them for various different outlets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Ross, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, timeline-wise, it's all very strange from the very beginning. I agree with Lance, not at all surprising that he's talking about it right now. This is the time to do that. You might catch somebody fresh off to where they'll say something about the organization that's super newsworthy or something like that. Like, it's the perfect time to get to a player, is like right off the cusp of this sort of this retirement announcement, everything like that. 100% on that. I think the thing that's always so interesting for me, though, when I take a look at this is they did the physical at the end of the year. Nothing was found on those images, on that imaging. Then they get back to the beginning of this, allegedly, right? And this is what the Saints have said in their own statement too, and everything like that. Like, so allegedly nothing there. Then you get to March, they restructure the contract, the big money move that we knew that they were going to make because they needed to get under the salary cap. But then also in March is when they found out about the possibility of surgery and all these other things, which is kind of what led them to drafting Tyler Shough in April, and then the announcement of the retirement on the first day of rookie minicamp, which makes sense because Kellen Moore was going to have to go back up to the podium that day, and all of a sudden it was going to be a bunch of questions. I think they made the right move there to not send Kellen Moore up to the podium without everyone knowing what was going on with Derek Carr. That's when the retirement was announced. And so I'm wondering, did they discover the injury was worse than they had immediately perceived, or whatever it was, after they restructured the contract? Or was this all a part of the process that needed to be laid out so they could get under the salary cap, make sure that they were under the salary cap, let this situation work out, and then get the money back, knowing that they were going to be able to get the money back? And if they were getting the money back, why? And that's the big thing for me. And so I want to be very clear about this. I'm speculating on this. I'm asking questions about this. I'm not accusing anyone of anything, but I am curious if there was anything that was borderline litigious that was going to happen between the Saints and Derek Carr because of the way that this injury got worsened, or they discovered the injury, whatever it was, that led to this just being the most amicable way for both to split. There's a reality in which that's the case. And then you do this, you do it this way behind closed doors. That way everybody walks away hands clean. Derek Carr still left with $10 million because he still kept the roster bonus. Saints still gave him that, but then the Saints get their $30 million back. And now all of a sudden they can say thank you because they're on the verge of the best salary cap health they've had in quite some time. And so doing it that way is not a bad thing, but I understand, I guess, why no one's going to come out and say like, oh, well, here's what actually happened, because it could potentially make somebody look bad. And so that's my super, super long way of saying, like, the biggest thing for me to where I'm kind of going like, nah, okay. Like, I guess, I don't buy it, but I will buy it, is because all in all, this worked out for both sides. And I don't know that we're ever going to actually hear the honest truth about it. Like, will there be a 30 for 30 on the 30? Like on the $30 million? Will we ever get to watch it? I'd love to. But I don't think so. I think that this is the story everyone's going to roll with until people just stop asking questions about it. And so I'm so curious. I'm so curious about more than anything else.
Yeah. John, do you have anywhere else to go with that?
I sure do. Do my best to try to detective some of this. Okay.
Yep.
So if everybody's travel back in time, like almost 4 months. So Kellen Moore gets introduced February 13th, right? He was very non-committal on his commitment to Derek Carr. Now, again, I've reported this. I've said it on this show that the Carr party took it as such, that they were very non-committal. So then all the talk about him wanting to go to other teams or exploring those options, all that other stuff. But 2 weeks later at the combine, Kellen Moore reaffirms and says Derek Carr is our guy, right? So that's February 27th. So then this injury allegedly started or happened at the beginning of March. They restructured Derek Carr on March 8th. The new league season started several days later after that. And so again, you just put some of those pieces together. It's either, bad timing or something ain't adding up all of the way, or something just is a little bit amiss. But it's like there was animosity, I guess, or there was friction at the beginning of this whole entire thing. Then supposedly it was patched up on the Saints end, but behind the scenes, Carr's party was still trying to kind of get a feel for things. And I think that's why they explored other options and all that stuff had came out. But, for the restructure, obviously that kind of pointed saying, hey, Derek's going to be our guy, right? And reaffirm that. And then just kind of the injury stuff that comes out after the fact. And look, I'm not going to sit here and say absolutely he got hurt in the offseason. I mean, he could have very well started throwing, and then that happened. But, if you follow the breadcrumbs, was it possible something else happened? Was it plausible? Yes, that could have been affected, because this whole entire time we thought it was the AC joint injury that he suffered against Green Bay. That was the one that we thought that was what we were originally told. And it's like, no, it was the one against the Giants. And it's like, that was his non-throwing hand. You know what I'm saying? And so that's what ended up getting hurt. And so it's just very bizarre. And look, again, he's if the injury was something for the Saints, he could have pushed for that entire $30 million, right? Like, this is something he could have got. We've talked about on this show that he would be entitled to that $30 million.
100%.
So again, is it just one of those where he's just a good guy? Like, I have met Derek Carr in the locker room. I've talked to Derek Carr plenty of times. He is extremely nice. His family is extremely nice. His family is awesome. I think personally he's one of the best. His agent's great. I just think when it comes to everything, he never was going to come out and publicly say anything, because that's not who Derek Carr is. He's not going to sit here and say, well, I'm not away, because again, he was doing rehab work already, why he wasn't at the Super Bowl and all this other stuff. And so it's just, again, a bizarre situation. I don't know that we'll ever get the truth of it. And then, for him to come out and talk about the situation at church and not really say something, it's kind of just, it's just odd, right? Like the whole entire thing. And so now it's a chapter that can be closed, and he did do the Saints a solid by only taking the 10 mil or whatever, and so it's just, now what is his, I don't want to say his legacy, but like, now that, that his last play in the NFL is him getting hurt against the New York Giants.
Right.
I wish that wasn't how he's remembered, but in some aspects that's probably how he's going to be remembered now, is you got hurt on a play where you could have just, not
2nd and 10,
right?
man. You ain't have to do all that.
Yeah.
You ain't have to do all that. There's two things. There's two things that I think are really interesting. Let's go all the way back to last season, the end of last season. Darren Rizzi talking about him throwing in practice, trying to come back, and all these other, or him in practice trying to work his way back. Let me say that more clearly. I don't know that Darren Rizzi, I don't know that Darren Rizzi ever specifically said that he was throwing, but he did say they were like trying to work on it. They were trying to do snaps and all these other things. There was a different thing that was going with that. So that's a curious piece, because there's a part of that that's like, okay, well, how much did you do? How much didn't you do? What does that mean? What did you not work on? What should you have worked on? All these other things, yada, yada. So there's a lot of like, woulda, coulda, shoulda.
Well, they made it sound like that he was going to come back at some point. Like,
100%.
Because
he's
he was
working
come
really
back.
hard. Yep.
Yeah,
that could also be gamesmanship. Right.
Yeah, sure.
Like, I'm not ever going to try to reveal my hand to the opponent to let them know anything about what's happening over here. Right. And if I can deceive them in a very easy way, then I'm absolutely going to do that. Now, that's not to say he wasn't working hard and trying to come back.
No.
Sure.
But in a team that was in the situation that they were in, I find it hard to believe that the team would have wanted him to come back in that scenario.
Absolutely fair.
I'm just playing devil's advocate.
Think about it. No, you're absolutely right. Because think about it. You let him come back, and then he actually gets more hurt during one of those games. And then there is no, hey, $30 million is coming back to you, because it's guaranteed for injury. So you're like, you're in a much worse situation there too. So you're spot on. And so then the second thing is, I have this shoulder injury that I know potentially threatens my future, but let me see if there's any other teams that are interested in me first.
Yeah.
That's the one. That's the little detail that's always so strange for me, is like, I don't know. I feel like if I ask you to come in and kick it with me, and like, let's go and get dinner or whatever, and you tell me no, my expectation is not that you called up 2 of our other friends to see if they wanted to go out first, got told no by them, and then told me no. I just expect that you told me no. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think you're going out there and looking for other people to go and kick it with before you tell me about this stuff, Dylan. And so the way that I look at it is like, what was that part all about? You know what I mean? So that's the other thing that, like, timeline wise, sorry, I wanted to turn that into personal trauma if I could, and I found a way to do it.
Yeah.
But
I don't think if I've ever done that to you. Probably
you haven't. You have not. I haven't. I'm
making you the bad guy, Dylan.
I'm
paint that picture.
It's whatever.
I'm being hilarious. It's fine. But that was the big thing for me, is like that other piece of like checking in with other teams when you know that you might be cooked. Like, that's a weird thing to me.
Well, and I think some of that came in that timeline of, like, again, the February 13th with Kellen Moore, and then the 27th, he kind of said he was their quarterback. So in between that time frame of 2 weeks, maybe after that,
during the combine,
absolutely, I think that's absolutely 100% a plausible thing. But if it's after March when he was hurt and other teams are calling on him and other stuff, it's either they weren't truthful or they didn't say Derek was hurt or really injured or something else wasn't there. So there's probably some little bit of interesting storytelling going on.
Yeah. Well, that's enough of someone who's not going to be in the building next year. Let's talk about some people that are going to be in the building, and pretty important that we haven't thrown enough shine on this offseason, and that is the new coaches. We're going to talk some of the coaches, and not like Kellen Moore and Brandon Staley. I feel like we have talked very in depth about them and what they mean and what their changes do. So we want to talk about some other guys. I'm going to start us off here. I'm going to go with one of my favorite hire and something I'm very, very excited about, and Terry Joseph. Ross knows me. I love college football, and I've loved watching the Notre Dame and Texas defenses while he has been at the helm. I mean, he is very important in one of my favorite college football players of all time, the development of Kyle Hamilton. And I think that he and Jahdae Barron, this last one, was the guy we talked about going to the Saints. I think that would have been almost.
I love Jahdae Barron.
Golly. I really think Terry Joseph goes very well with Brandon Staley's defense. Think about like the lighter box. The secondary is all about versatility and doing a little bit of everything. And we've talked a lot about it. Terry Joseph, a very, very, very smart football mind and all about preparation. And I think that he fits perfectly into that coaching staff. And I think that he and Brandon Staley, with the young talent, we see guys like Jonas Sanker. I shouted out Nephi Sewell as someone who could be versatile. I think that these are players, Justin Reed, Tyrann Mathieu. These are guys that can do a little bit of everything. And I think that this is going to be a really fun secondary with the minds of Brandon Staley and Terry Joseph working together with the talent that they have.
Dig it.
Scary Terry.
Dig it. Scary Terry. You can run, but you can't hide.
Yeah. I think it's a good call because, again, you talk about getting Bo Davis as well, but I mean, with the way they got all the insight about Kelvin Banks Jr., I mean, they knew everything and it matched up everything there, right? And the same could be said about Vernon Broughton, because everybody talked about Vernon Broughton was like not supposed to be drafted where he was, all this other stuff. Like I saw the grades, which take those and just, wipe your butt with them if you want. But like, I mean,
will use toilet paper.
Well, for the people that
actually civilized humans.
Like a civilized human.
Okay, good deal. But at any rate, again, I think that just adds another thing, just a respect thing, because Bo Davis and Terry Joseph are very well respected coaches, and so again, I think it gives them a little bit of extra juice to what they need, and something they've just been missing. So again, between that and the Texas pipeline, I'm excited to see what they bring to the table. Already seeing it.
Yeah. The cerebral nature, I think, between Terry Joseph and Brandon Staley, I think is really, the cerebral nature amongst a lot of defensive coaching staff is super exciting. It's a lot of super smart dudes.
Yeah. Lance, who's the coach you wanted to give a little shout out to?
Well, this is a guy that I've got a personal relationship with and a long history with. New strength coach, Ted Rath. Yes, I said strength coach. I wonder why.
Dude is swole.
I think everybody knows why I said strength coach, right? Like, I don't know that a team in the National Football League has had more soft tissue injuries than the Saints over the last, let's just call it 3 years. Injuries to me that seem to be more preventable, that have continued to rear their ugly head. And, you know, I never spent a ton of time with Coach Matt Ray, the former strength coach, or the guy that was ahead of all of the performance training in the building. But from the outsider's perspective, it seemed like he a lot of times was more like concerned with his following and his social media presence than actually getting in the weight room and working with these guys to make sure that not only are they prepared, but they're able to withstand a 20+ week season. It just, to me, like, I'm super old school, right? Like, I came into the NFL 20 years ago now. I felt like you play the way that you train. And if you train in a protected kind of like almost going to push the gas, but I'm not going to push it too much manner, then you open yourself up to the possibility of being injured more and more, right? Like, I get it. The workload over time needs to come down a little bit. But if you're not like training crazy hard to prepare yourself for a crazy hard and long season, then you're not going to make it. That's just how it is. And Ted was my college teammate, so that obviously we have a history. He was my college teammate at Toledo. He came in either 2 or 3, maybe even 3 years after me, but we spent time together. And then when I left to go to the NFL, when Ted was done playing there, he came in as a linebacker, played some linebacker and defensive end. He immediately went and was like an assistant strength coach at Toledo.
Nice.
And to me, it made perfect sense because he was a guy that loved being in a weight room, loved taking care of his body, making sure he was strong, and was a great coach right away. And I know that because I was there visiting my brother who was still playing at Toledo. So I got to see Ted with my own 2 eyes. Now, fast forward 10+ years later, I'm getting ready to sign with the Lions. And guess who the assistant strength coach is with the Lions? It's Ted Rath. So I'm like, oh, man, this is awesome. Like I know this guy. I know he cares. I know he's super duper smart and going to like combine the two, right? Of the old school. We've got to really, really, throw the weights around and get physical and make sure that we're strong, but also having the most recent knowledge and the statistics as far as what are the best practices to make sure you can do that and take care of your guys at the same time. Like he's not a guy that's stubborn and isn't open to learning new things or open to different ideas. He's always studying and trying to learn new things. And with anything in the National Football League or pro sports for that matter, everybody's trying to find some sort of an edge. And he's definitely one of those guys that's going to be innovative in the weight room, and listen to not just the stuff that he's hearing from other mentors and things like that, but listen to the things that his players are bringing to him and allowing them to kind of navigate their bodies, because everybody's different. There can't be a cookie cutter standard for how people train. We're all different. We all have different jobs on the field. And he's a guy that can tap into all that. Like super smart family man, already is like ingrained in the New Orleans culture. I mean, he texts me. We text almost every single week and talk about, the family moving down there and their transition. And I really do think that he's going to pay big time dividends for this team and guys being able to stay more healthy. Now, obviously, I'm not going to sit here and tell you we're not going to have any injuries. That's the NFL, right? And as an agent, when I'm recruiting players, I say the injury rate in the NFL is 100%. Everybody gets hurt. If you play long enough, you're going to get hurt. That's the reality of playing a brutal physical sport. But having a strength coach and coaches, because let's throw Charles Bird in there, even though he's been there for a long time, a former teammate of mine with the Browns, super smart guys that care about the players and will do everything that it takes to make sure that guys will be healthy and stay healthy as long as humanly possible.
That's awesome.
I think that the strength and conditioning coaches are some of the most underrated in terms of importance on a wide scale coaches on the coaching staff. But with that, let's stop talking about him. And John, who is the coach that you wanted to talk about?
He's important, but he ain't that important.
Hey.
Well, not to go back and beat this dead horse, but Matt Rhea, I think it's what ended up happening. I think they just relied on too much on the data and analytics. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
they went full sports science.
Yeah, I was way too, and it's like you can't replace that with full power.
It's hard to do that.
About. Yeah. So, and you saw it in the OTA workouts. Like you saw them boys getting after it with it. So, I mean, there's no substitute for throwing them weights around. So I'm sure it's going to pay dividends. And we won't know until training camp. Like, I don't know how many players. We have to go back, Ross, to just see how many actually got hurt at what point.
Yeah.
I mean, Kendre getting hurt on day one. DeMario got hurt. A whole bunch of players just end up soft tissues. Pete Warner,
Nick Saldiveri had the calf injury. It was like calf.
Yep.
Yeah, it was like calf, groin. There was like a couple people who had back strains. Stuff like that. Like there was a whole bunch of that.
Yeah. But anyways, I digress. So back to what Dylan was asking. I'm going to go with I'm going to buck the norm, and I'm going to take two guys, but they're returning guys. So I kind of see them as a tandem. It's Joel Thomas, running backs coach, and Brendan Nugent, the offensive line coach. So I just think that when you look at it, these guys, they previously here under Sean Payton. When you look at their track history with the offensive line, the running game, especially Joel Thomas, dude, I'm going to tell you, there's nobody more excited about Joel Thomas coming back to the scene than Alvin Kamara, because he was there with the boom and zoom. You know, he got to see a lot of that stuff, and Joel Thomas is such an integral part. Now he's an associate head coach as well. So, I mean, or associate coach, excuse me. And so it's refreshing to see him. And look, him and Brendan Nugent, being that they've worked together, they're already kind of like in sync. And same thing, I wrote a column about this and talking about how him and TJ Paganetti and Brendan Nugent, all three eyes are on the running game. They know exactly what to do. They're working off each other. It's kind of like, I guess they're like Earth, Wind, and Fire, you know, for those who actually get the reference. I'm sorry if you're very young and you don't know Earth, Wind, and Fire. But that's what I'm actually going to call it, Earth, Wind, and Fire. But like they just in perfect sync, harmony. And I just think with the offensive line, we're seeing drills that we haven't seen. We've seen drills with the running backs that we haven't seen. Like just the fact of them being on these yoga balls, like the running backs, like they're laying their chest on yoga balls, and then they have to spin off of that, keep their balance, and then run through these pads. And Joel Thomas is putting into weight. We didn't see that last year, and nothing wrong with Derek Foster. Derek Foster brought a whole bunch of good things to it, but like just that intentionality, and the same thing with Brendan Nugent. He's working with all these resistance bands and such for the offensive line. Again, medicine balls, different things. And you know, I actually talked to one of the players who was there before. It was Landon Young. He's like, look, we did this in 21 and it worked extremely well for that offensive line and some of the guys that were there. And so I'm excited about those two returning. I think it gives some familiarity. It gives some experience and some guys that Kellen Moore can really lean on, because these guys are some that they're not as familiar with. You know, that's was part of Kellen Moore's hiring process, is he didn't know Joel Thomas personally. Like he knew of Joel Thomas and he's heard a lot about him because Joel Thomas has been around for a long time. But, you know, that was one of those hires where he's kind of mixed in guys he knew and didn't know. And like, I really feel like he's put together a coaching staff that's just in some aspects is again, it might take some time to cook, right? Like you don't just make a gumbo in an hour, right? Unless you cheat and get something
not a good gumbo
like that. Not a good gumbo, right? Yeah.
It will be a gumbo by definition.
It might be that New York gumbo that they try to sell. Like, what the hell is that? You know what I'm saying?
Nah, that's just soup.
That's soup. Yeah. That ain't nothing. That's crap. That's what that is. Isn't it? So, but anyways, hopefully y'all feel me on that one.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we're actually going to carry over this coach conversation into our last episode, last little segment where we're going to start off with Ross coming up next.
Bruce.
wrapping it up today. We're going to get into Kendre Miller in a little bit, but I wanted to still give Ross the chance to talk about his coach and what he wanted to talk about. And maybe it'll, play into it.
Well, let's say, it all kind of ties together. This should be unsurprising for anybody that's an everydayer over at Locked On Saints, but the guy I was going to talk about was TJ Paganelli, the New Orleans Saints offensive run game coordinator. He's not a coach in that he's like coaching and working with these guys or a specific position group or anything like that, but he is the guy that is kind of masterminding alongside Kellen Moore and Joel Thomas and Brendan Nugent this run game. And a lot of it is bringing over some of the stuff that he achieved with Philadelphia over the course of the years that he was with them. There were only 2 seasons in which TJ Paganelli was involved in the Philadelphia Eagles run game in which the Philadelphia Eagles were not a top 10 run game. That's a pretty impressive stretch of time, and that's pretty impressive results. Now, of course, Jeff Stoutland, the undisputed people's champion of offensive line coaches in the NFL, the guy's widely considered the best offensive line coach in the NFL, was of course a part of that as well. But TJ Paganelli is getting to bring all of that to New Orleans in only his second NFL stop, despite the fact that he took his first NFL job like 10 years ago. So he was just always with Philly. He went back to Oregon for a little while, his alma mater, where he coached for a bit. And then now he's here in New Orleans and could not be happier to be in New Orleans. Another guy that's really embracing the community, like Ted Rath with Lance was talking about earlier. And so I just think that like him, and the reason why it's so important is that you have a defense that's changing scheme. And so there might be some growing pains there. You have whichever young quarterback you choose, you'll have a young quarterback as your starter. The thing that will take the pressure off of both of those elements of the game is the ability to be able to effectively and efficiently run the football. And so for me, the hire that most immediately impacts success in the run game, kind of through ripple effects, could impact the success of the team as a whole, not putting the defense in bad positions, not putting quarterbacks in positions where they have to be heroes. And so I look at the addition of Paganelli as being a big part of what could make the Saints successful sooner rather than later. It doesn't necessarily mean 2025, but allow them to be able to get to a place where they can find a sustainable rushing attack moving forward over the course of the next few years as a part of this build.
Yeah. And you pointed out that run game coordinator is relatively new position with the Saints. They had a senior offensive assistant last year, and he had a little bit of hand with the run game, if you will, but Rick Dennison, but this is a really new position. They have new positions on the coaching staff that we just haven't seen. So that's good.
Edges coach.
Sorry, Dylan.
You got the defensive pass game coordinator as well. That's relatively new to the team. And then offensive run game coordinator. Like, yeah, you're absolutely right. Like the way that they change things around with this coaching staff is really interesting because it put a lot of focus on individual positions, an edges coach and a defensive line coach, as opposed to a defensive line coach trying to communicate to 2 different groups of players with 2 different responsibilities, or with sets of different responsibilities. You have a linebackers coach that's not the edges coach. So you have that piece. You have, not only a defensive backs coach, but you have a cornerbacks coach, and you have a defensive back, like assistant defensive backs coach or something like that is the other part of it. And so like you have all of these little kind of shifts that they, put in place that kind of allow them to be able to focus down. And then Kellen Moore got 2 guys that are former head coaches on his staff. He's got an offensive coordinator that he's been with in the last 3 places, but has more NFL experience than he does. And then added an associate head coach in Joel Thomas. Like it's a very self-aware group of like where the deficiencies could be and how to get ahead of those things.
Yeah. And hopefully this run game coordinator position will be good for Kendre Miller, who we're going to close the show out with, and it is our next player highlight, player preview, talking about where he is headed. I mentioned earlier, he was like the one guy from the OTA drills. He looked good. He looked smooth. Kellen Moore, great news for him if Kellen Moore is really going in with a blank slate, because Kendre Miller has always been this fun in theory guy, but we have not really seen it be able to sustain itself or break out. And so, Lance, I want to start off with you talking about Kendre Miller this season, what you want to see him do, what you think he can do.
Well, I mean, just to the point that you just made about him having a clean slate, he better. And most of the guys who have not been regulars, right, that have been around though, they should all be on the same playing field as far as clean slate, right? Like this, sure, there's a lot of the same front office people, right? Mickey's still the GM, Jeff Ireland is still there, like all those guys are still there, but the staff is a new staff. So they should obviously look at what these guys have done in the past, but not make total complete judgments on a player based on what happened before they were even around, right? Because who's to say that Joel Thomas can't coach Kendre Miller better than he was coached in the past? Who's to say that Ted Rath can't help keep Kendre Miller healthy or healthier than he's been in the past? And I think if I, oh, my bad. I don't know what happened.
Oh, yeah, you're good. You're good. Cut out a little bit.
You went into the Matrix for a second.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that was the internet telling me that I was rambling, but I do think that you look at the flash plays that he's made and you get excited about those. And then you say, okay, well, I've seen what he can do as far as like the really, really good things. How can we multiply that? How can we get more out of that? And I think with him, it just obviously starts with being able to be healthy. It's not a matter of whether Kendre Miller has the chops to be successful in the NFL. Right. I think I've seen enough over the last couple of years that tell me like, okay, this dude can play. It's just a matter of him being healthy and being available to play. So I think first and foremost, he'll be more healthy this year. I believe he will. And he better take that very, very seriously as far as taking care of his body goes, because this could be his last opportunity in New Orleans. I'm not going to say this is his last opportunity ever in the NFL. He's too good of a player, but I do think that he's got potentially a shorter leash than some other guys because of the injury history. So if the injury bug bites him again, I don't see it as a far-fetched situation that the team is ready to kind of be done with him and move on to the new and younger guys. But I think that he'll be able to stay healthy. I think he not only will be a contributor, but I think he'll be somebody that is involved a lot more than maybe people think at this point in time. And I mean, look, the guy can do it all. He can protect, he can run, obviously, he can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's explosive with the ball in his hands, man. Like he's fun to watch. And I'm looking forward to seeing more of that this season. But most importantly, he's got to stay healthy in order to be the type of contributor that I believe that he can be.
Yeah. John, what do you think about Kendre Miller?
Well, look, and for Joel Thomas, I mean, he actually coached him in 2023. So we talk about that game against the Falcons and other things that he did. Like Joel Thomas was his running backs coach, and Joel Thomas had a lot of good insight on Kendre Miller when he came out of the draft and talked about his abilities. And so he's got extreme talent. I mean, he's talented as everything. I think he has extreme potential, but the reality is he played in 14 of 34 games in his first 2 NFL seasons. So availability, if he can at least be there for, it doesn't even need to be 17 games. Can he be there for 10 to 12? I think he has a much better trajectory in his career, and it'll help give him some confidence. I don't expect him to be 17 game player and make it the whole way, but I'm just asking for like 10, 12.
But you should, though.
14. Yeah, right.
You should. For a player that's as young as he is, you should expect a 17 game season from him. That should be the expectation. Now, obviously, he hasn't been able to be available that often, but I mean, it's not a bad thing to say, okay, we expect this guy to be on the field for every game.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And look, they don't have Taysom Hill, and they're not going to have him for months, probably. I mean, it'll be a shock when he actually gets back on the field. And I don't know, it's a guarantee that he does come back. Like, it's coming off of a major injury. They got to have a 1-2 punch. They got to have Kendre Miller here. And if it's not Kendre Miller, it's got to be Devin Neal. And if it's not Devin Neal, it needs to be somebody else. It needs to be, is it Clyde Edwards-Helaire? Is it one of these other guys that they got on the roster or something? I mean, they have to, in order for this run attack, like what we talked about with TJ Paganetti, Nugent, Joel Thomas, they got to have the backs to do it. And if you ask AK, he'll take all the touches. He'll do it. But Is that sustainable for a 17-game season? No. I mean, AK is a little bit older. He can do it probably, but they need that good 1-2 punch like they've had in the past. And so if Kendre can stay healthy, man, I just feel like not only as a runner, I think the scheme will help him out a lot. Actually, and Ross has touched on that about where his run direction was in college and what this system will actually feature for him. But getting him involved in the passing game, like I don't remember a lot of that last year. And even the times he was available, I mean, 8 games, I don't remember a lot. And every time they tried to go to him, it never worked either. So I'm interested to see how they scheme up from a coaching perspective, but I think Kendre Miller can be something special. We just want to see it. That's all.
Yep. Yeah. Ross, what do you think?
39 carries last year and 13 missed tackles forced. That's 33% in terms of a ratio between missed tackles forced and carries. And then the other thing that I'll mention is in the last 2 seasons for the New Orleans Saints, they've had one running back over the course of the last 2 seasons that have carried the ball more than 13 times, just 13 times, and led the team in yards after contact. And in both of those seasons, it was Kendre Miller. Those are the things that I think you should be looking to maximize Kendre Miller in. And so what John was referencing a second ago in terms of point of attack distribution and what was being called for him and everything like that, during his time at TCU, he was an explosive back because they ran a lot of inside zone. So last year you saw a lot of outside zone. The angles are very different, all these other things. You're trying to get outside the tackle. The offensive line's moving to go and block areas of the field, zones of the field, try to create gaps for the running back to be able to attack. Inside zone, similar stuff, but staying inside the tackles, typically. And
they
so,
hit quicker.
And they hit a lot quicker. Yeah. And so you effectively, and I was going to ask for your help on this, Lance, because I think I'm thinking about the right thing here. You effectively want to be an effective one-cut runner in those situations, right? Foot in the dirt, pick a direction, hit the gap, go, right?
100%.
And Kendre Miller showed that he had that ability during his time at TCU. There are the analytics that I just brought up with 13 missed tackles on 33, and then on 33 carries, and then the yards after contact opportunities. Those are traits that show that he can be that guy and that skill set has translated to the NFL. And so we've said everything about health, but I wanted to highlight why he's such a good fit and why everything points to him still being able to do exactly what it was that got him drafted in the first place at the NFL level. And then the other thing that I'll mention, I'll try to get through quickly, is we think about who was the head coach and the lead decision maker during those 2 seasons with Kendre Miller. It was Dennis Allen, the same guy that we credit for misutilizing Zach Bond, for not necessarily finding the right place to play Alontae Taylor, or at least changing his mind a little bit too much in those situations, making the decision to roll with Marcus Davenport while letting Trey Hendrickson walk out of the building. Is it so far-fetched that he also made the wrong decisions on how to utilize Kendre Miller working with his offense and working with his offensive coordinator last year in Clint Kubiak? I don't think that it's that far-fetched. That's something from the coaching decision side also impacted how Kendre Miller was utilized. And so with a system that should support him better and in a system that should be asking him to do the things that he did, maybe that's part of what keeps him healthy, is asking him to do the things that he already knows how to do and that he does well, as opposed to asking him to do these other bits and bobs, which you're going to have to do some things that are going to make you more diverse as a player, no matter what. Can't be a one-dimensional guy. But I do think that all of that comes together for Kendre Miller to have the potential for a breakout season in 2025. And these are the reasons why we say that the talent is not the question. It's only the health.
I think it's important to remember with Kendre is that he's entering year 3, but he is still 22 years old.
That is true too. He was the youngest player in that draft.
He's going to turn 20. He's going to turn 23 in a couple of days, but he's 4 years younger than Tyler Shough.
Tyler Shough catching a stray.
No, I'm just saying. I mean, if you want to, I'm just saying. But no, he's really young, and I think that there is plenty of time for him to, plenty of running backs don't get started in the NFL until they're 23. So yeah, he's maybe a little bit of a draft necessity, John.
Yeah, I was just going to say, going back to that Dennis Allen thing, like it was in training camp that he called out Kendre Miller for not being available, not being healthy, and an ability to learn the playbook. Like, I mean, that mind was made up a long time ago, and I get it. He got hurt first day of training camp, but was that because of what Ted Rath Sports Science was. You know what I'm saying? Do we see a different Kendre in training camp? I mean, I'd give him the benefit of the doubt, but like it was just all sorts of wrong. And again, if you follow the details and look at the results, I mean, I think it's pretty easy where you can see where some of the faults were at. You know, I won't say it's 100% on Dennis Allen, but a lot of it was probably.
Yeah,
I can't believe you blamed DA for the Marcus Davenport over Trey Hendrickson situation.
That was Ross. Hold on, where did you come from?
I don't feel like that was on him. I feel like that one came from up top.
Yeah, you're probably right. I was just piecing stuff together. You know what I mean? I was piecing stuff together.
Well, hopefully you can put yourself back together, the pieces of yourself back together for next week for Monday's show. Thank you for listening to Saints Squad. Check out me, Ross, John, and Lance on our socials for the latest. We'll be right back here on Monday to talk more Saints football. But before next week, I wanted to take a little bit of a serious moment because the news came out right after we wrapped up last time. I wanted to say rest in peace to John Brinkus, sports science. We've said the name a bunch, and it reminded me. As a 9-year-old nerd who loves sports science was like the greatest thing of all time for me.
Yeah.
And he had an amazing Drew Brees episode. So I just wanted to, take this time, rest in peace, John Brinkus. And until then, I'll see y'all next week.